A black elderly woman tries to pay with her exclusive card and gets laughed at by the staff. What unfolds next will make you question everything you thought about wealth and respect. Let us know in the comment section below where you're watching from. Marilyn Foxx stood at the reception desk of the Penhurst Grand, her fingers wrapped calmly around her cane's ivory handle. She didn't lean on it. She never did. The cane was more of a statement now, white, carved from fossilized mammoth bone, a gift from a Sierra Leonean diplomat decades ago. It matched her presence, rare, grounded in history, and impossible to fake. The young woman behind the counter blinked down at the platinum card in her hand, then back up at Marilyn, face twisted in confusion. A second passed, then a chuckle. It started small but quickly turned into a poorly stifled laugh as she nudged the bellhop beside her. Ma'am, this is a Centurion card," the receptionist said, her voice sharp with disbelief. "You're telling me this is your card?" Marilyn didn't flinch. She simply stared, unblinking, her eyes behind custom bifocals never leaving the woman's face. "I am," she replied. Her voice was smooth, almost lazy, but each word carried weight. "And I'd appreciate it if you ran it." Quietly. The bellhop leaned over and whispered something. Marilyn heard the words, "scammer," and "used to this trick." Her jaw tightened a fraction. Just a flicker, but her face stayed composed. Behind her, a family in tennis whites whispered too. The mother tilted her sunglasses down and frowned. The teenage daughter smirked. A black woman, old enough to be their grandmother, wearing a powder blue tailored pantsuit and polished brogues. "In this hotel, the audacity." "I'll need to verify with the issuing bank," the receptionist said. "You know, just a routine thing." "It's not routine," Marilyn said. "You've already made that clear." Her hand moved slowly, deliberately, to retrieve the card. As she slipped it back into the leather wallet, black crocodile, no logo, stitched by hand in Paris. The receptionist's mouth opened to protest, but Marilyn was already turning. She didn't storm out. She walked, steady, unbothered, but the lobby followed her with their eyes, every step measured, every footfall saying, "You just made a mistake you can't undo." Upstairs, in the presidential suite that she had reserved under the name M. Fox Holdings, her assistant was already on the phone. "They're disrespecting you downstairs," said Andre Wallace, pacing by the window. "Want me to call Whitman now?" "No," Marilyn said, lowering herself into a wingback chair near the fireplace. "Let them laugh a little longer. It's useful." Andre turned. His fresh-cut fade, smart charcoal blazer, and thin gold chain were the marks of a man raised in South L.A. who'd earned his seat in boardrooms without forgetting the streets. But in front of Marilyn, he was still the boy she'd met fresh out of MIT, pitching a soil automation system from a dorm hallway with broken tile and ambition in his voice. "They're treating you like you don't belong. We don't have to keep doing this," he said. Marilyn smiled gently. "Oh, but we do." She glanced at the tablet beside her. An open email displayed the subject line, "WBC Acquisition Finalization, $3.40 B, awaiting your signature." Whitman and Brooks Capital, the same firm that had just acquired 20% of the luxury hotel chain Marilyn was sitting in, the same one Cole Whitman, tech venture darling turned private equity juggernaut, was crowing about on LinkedIn last night. She tapped the screen, paused, then closed it. Andre leaned against the glass, watching the Chicago skyline bleed gold in the early evening. "You really gonna let them get away with that?" he asked. Marilyn didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, weathered but strong. Hands that signed billion-dollar contracts. Hands that wiped tears from foster kids' cheeks before they became Rhodes Scholars. Hands that decades ago picked cotton with her grandmother in Georgia summers so hot they made the air hum. Finally, she said, "There's a kind of power they've never learned to fear. The kind that waits." Down in Midtown, in a glass-topped conference room, Cole Whitman tossed a stress ball at the ceiling and caught it mid-air. "He still hasn't signed," he muttered, glancing at his CFO. "Marilyn?" The CFO raised an eyebrow. "She's old. Maybe she forgot." Cole snorted. "She's probably still using paper checks. We'll give her till tomorrow. If not, we close with Brooks. They'll take less." The others in the room nodded, already shifting focus to the next pitch deck. No one really questioned it. Marilyn Foxx was just a legacy name, someone who lucked into early investments and rode it out for 50 years. She was respected, sure, but not feared. That was their first mistake. Later that night, Marilyn called a number she hadn't used in over a decade. A man answered on the second ring. "You really want me to shut it down?" he asked, voice low, serious. "I want it gone by morning." "Even the subsidiaries?" "All of it." He paused. "That'll cost some people jobs." Marilyn breathed in slowly. Then they should have picked a better employer. She hung up. Andre stared. "Wait, did you just pull the deal?" "No," Marilyn said, her voice flat. "I pulled them." He laughed, half in disbelief. "You just canceled a $3,400,000,000 0-cents deal over a receptionist?" Marilyn shook her head. "No, Andre. I canceled a $3,400,000,000 0-cents deal over an entire system that thinks it's above accountability. That girl was just the echo. I don't chase echoes. I cut down the source." Andre blinked, then nodded. Outside, the city kept spinning, but inside that suite, legacy was already shifting. And in a boardroom downtown, Cole Whitman had no idea the knife was already in the air, falling. Marilyn Foxx sat still in the quiet of her suite, the lights of the skyline stretching out like molten silver behind her. She wasn't watching the city. She was watching time, thinking in years, not seconds. It was the same posture she had used decades ago, the first time she walked into a meeting as the only black woman in the room. Her notepad full, her patience loaded like a chambered round. Across from her, Andre paced, still vibrating from what he just witnessed. His hands moved as he spoke, body swaying with energy like it needed a drumbeat to keep up. "Do you realize what kind of headline that would make? Elderly black woman cancels multi-billion-dollar deal overnight. They won't even print it right. They'll call you emotional." Marilyn's lips parted slightly. "They'll call me dangerous." "And they'll be right." Andre stopped pacing. "You're really not going to warn them? Just let Whitman and Brooks find out through collapsed trades?" Marilyn gave a slight nod, then turned her gaze toward the window. "Let the market educate them. That's what they worship anyway." She reached for the envelope on the table next to her chair. Thick, heavy, cream-colored, the kind that doesn't fold. Inside it was a single sheet of custom linen paper, gold foil at the top. Her name, Marilyn Foxx, in embossed letters, underlined by the words, "Legacy Honors Gala 2025. It was an award, a Lifetime Achievement Acknowledgement. She was meant to accept it in 2 weeks at the very hotel that had just questioned her existence. She tore the envelope in half. Downstairs, the receptionist was still on shift, now whispering to another guest about this old woman who tried to flash a black card like she owned the place. Her voice was gleeful, unaware that word of her behavior had already reached corporate, or that her boss had just received a call from someone with too much influence to ignore. "You said her name was what?" the general manager asked over the phone. Voice clipped. "Marilyn Foxx. Old, black, maybe in her 80s. Real bossy." Silence. Then the GM's breath caught in his throat. "Get me her reservation now. And start praying she didn't leave a review." Click. Elsewhere, the name Marilyn Foxx was being whispered in financial back channels like a ghost story told in boardrooms. Someone on Twitter posted a screenshot. The WBC acquisition deal had suddenly vanished from the investment dashboard of a major fund. Then another firm tweeted a vague warning, "Always know whose name is on the check." By midnight, the story was moving. Hedge funds panicked. Partners called partners. Everyone had the same question. What did we miss? Meanwhile, in a tiny diner on the south side, Andre's mother, June Wallace, folded laundry at the counter while waiting for him to call. She hadn't liked him joining the startup life, said it was risky, said, "Tech don't feed a family." But she always loved Miss Marilyn. That woman had paid for Andre's college application fees when he was 17, and pretending he had it all handled. She called her Miss Marilyn, always with that little softness in her voice, like talking about an elder who was part queen, part church auntie. Back in the suite, Andre sat now. His excitement had mellowed into something deeper. A question hung in the air. He hadn't dared ask until now. "Why didn't you let me speak up downstairs?" he asked. Marilyn glanced over her glasses. "You wanted to defend me?" "Yeah," she nodded slowly. "That was your instinct. But instincts are for fire. I needed you to be water." Andre frowned, confused. "If you jumped in, they would have remembered your anger, not my silence," she said. "They would have written you into the story instead of noticing what's broken in theirs." He exhaled, the weight of that sinking in. "But still, shouldn't we say something?" Marilyn's fingers tapped gently on the armrest. One tap for every time she'd been ignored, dismissed, underestimated. "They'll listen when the money stops moving," she said. "That's a language they all understand." Elsewhere, Cole Whitman was still oblivious. He was at an exclusive rooftop bar in New York, drinking mezcal with a tech influencer and bragging about how he was modernizing finance by shaking up dinosaurs like M. Fox Holdings. "Old money's too slow," he said. "They think patience is a strategy." The influencer laughed. She didn't know Marilyn. Most people didn't. That was the point. That was the mistake. By morning, M. Fox Holdings had officially withdrawn from the WBC acquisition. A quiet message was sent to the exchange. Deal terminated. Funds reallocated. No further comment. And with that, a cascade began. Contracts defaulted, loans tethered to the deal were flagged for review, and the market value of Whitman and Brooks Capital began to stutter. Inside their boardroom, a partner named Adrian Kim slammed a stack of papers on the table. "You didn't vet the relationship," he shouted at Cole. "You let your mouth write a check her legacy just voided." Cole, still hungover, blinked. "But wait, are you saying this is about Marilyn Foxx? That Marilyn Foxx? I thought she was dead?" Adrian snapped. "No, she's just been out of your line of sight." Cole looked pale. "I didn't know she had that much equity left." "She didn't need equity. She is equity." At that moment, across the city, Marilyn sat at her favorite breakfast spot. Small, no website, cash only. The owner poured her tea without asking. "You want your usual, Miss Fox?" She smiled. "Yes, please." No fanfare, no headlines. Just peace. As she stirred her cup, her phone buzzed. A text from a private number read, "Message received. Correction incoming." She slid the phone back into her purse and took a slow sip. Correction indeed. But this was just the beginning. Cole Whitman stood with his hands on the edge of the marble sink in the private bathroom of Whitman and Brooks' executive floor. He stared into the mirror, blinking slow and deliberate, like he could rewind the last 24 hours just by holding eye contact with himself. The market was dipping. Their phones wouldn't stop ringing. Clients were threatening to pull out, and no one, not one person, could explain how it had all fallen apart this fast. Except him. He knew exactly when it started. Not with a market correction. Not with some surprise regulatory hold. No, it started when he underestimated that old black woman in the powder blue suit. Cole had reviewed the security footage. His team flagged it after internal PR caught a mention online. He watched her walk out of the Penhurst Grand like a queen in exile. No yelling, no threats, just composure. That kind of silence was more dangerous than a scandal. Scandals passed. Silence meant calculation. Silence meant power. Behind the mirror in the bathroom, his phone buzzed again. He let it ring. There was nothing to say. At least, not yet. Downstairs in the building's open-concept innovation floor, Andre Wallace was pacing again, only this time in a glass office of a downtown accelerator funded by M. Fox Holdings. He had just come off a tense call with a corporate sponsor who'd pulled out of a seed funding round because of the WBC shakeup. His voice was hoarse from explaining things he shouldn't have had to explain. "They're scared," he said into the phone. "And you know what? I get it. It looks like the ground's moving, but this is what disruption feels like, and we're building something that can survive disruption." A pause. Then he nodded. "Yeah, you can call me again tomorrow. I have an update." He hung up and let out a long breath. The floor-to-ceiling window in the office faced east, and sunlight painted his skin in gold, but all he felt was heat, not from the sun, from pressure. He texted Marilyn. "Getting some blowback. They're pulling money." Her response was fast. Andre typed again, slower this time. "They think we're unstable now, unreliable." Another pause. Then she replied, "Then it's time they see who we really are." He stared at her message, thumb hovering above the keyboard. In a corner of the suite at the hotel, Marilyn watched the market tickers scroll in silence. She wasn't surprised. The names pulling out were the same ones who'd never returned her calls 20 years ago. The ones who'd never funded black founders unless there was a photo op involved. She didn't need them now. She never had. A knock came at her door. She opened it to reveal someone she hadn't seen in years. Leroy Maddox, her oldest rival, her former mentor, and the first man to try to cut her out of a real estate syndicate back in '89. "Still alive," Marilyn said flatly. "Barely," he replied with a dry chuckle. "You here to gloat?" "Came to apologize." Marilyn raised one brow. Leroy stepped inside slowly, like the room might trap him. He didn't sit. "I told Whitman not to touch that deal without vetting it. I told him you were the one person he didn't want to cross." "He didn't listen," she said, sitting calmly and pouring herself tea. "He's got that new school arrogance," Leroy muttered, "the kind that thinks disruption is the same as disrespect." Marilyn stirred her tea. "They're not." "No," Leroy agreed. "They're not." He handed her a small folder. "I did some digging. There's more going on at WBC than bad manners and missed signatures." She opened it. What she saw made her It wasn't just Whitman's arrogance. It was Whitman's numbers. Cooked books, shell companies, over-leveraged acquisitions masked by ghost subsidiaries. He wasn't just disrespectful. He was sloppy. Marilyn looked up, eyes sharper now. "How long's this been happening?" "Long enough for a storm," Leroy said. She nodded. "Good." Back in the tech incubator, Andre got another email from a potential backer. Declined. No explanation. He didn't need one. He stood ready to leave when a quiet knock tapped at his glass door. It was a young woman in a hijab and a fitted blazer. She walked in confidently and handed him a single sheet of paper. "I was told to give this to you directly. From Miss Fox." He opened it. At the top, "Project Soil, emergency funding round approved, $200.00." Andre blinked. His eyes scanned the line again. He looked up, mouth slightly open. "She's serious." The woman nodded. She says, "If they want to see a phoenix, burn the ashes big enough." Andre smiled for the first time in hours. He pressed the paper to his chest. Back at Whitman and Brooks, Cole was on his last call of the day. His voice no longer sounded smug. It sounded exhausted. "We were trying to recover the optics," he told the board. "We've reached out to her. No response." A voice cut in. "You didn't lose her." Cole leaned in, confused. "You lost everyone who listens to her?" The call disconnected. He sat back in his chair, staring at the ceiling like it could offer him a ladder back to the top. It wouldn't. And across the city, Marilyn Foxx, with a slight smirk playing at her lips, picked up her phone, dialed a number from memory, and said 4 words that sent the final signal. "It's time. Release soil." The news broke at 6:03 a.m. Eastern Time. In bold, defiant letters across the top of financial news outlets, the headline read, "Fox Holdings launches $700 0 M initiative to fund marginalized founders. Project Soil begins today." The markets hadn't even opened yet, but the impact was already seeding itself across every timeline, inbox, and group chat in corporate America. By 6:45 a.m., 3 major VC firms had issued statements praising the move. By 7:10, half a dozen tech startups, led by Black and brown founders, were trending with the hashtag #SoilFunded. And by 7:30 a.m., Cole Whitman was pacing in his office, in sweatpants, phone glued to his ear, shouting at a press consultant who was trying not to sound terrified. "You don't get it," he snapped. "They're not just cutting us out, they're replacing us. You understand that? She didn't just ruin the deal, she buried it and built a garden over it." The consultant stammered something about damage control. Cole slammed the phone down without a word. There was no control anymore. Not here. Not else. At that same moment, Marilyn Foxx stood quietly at the back of a room filled with reporters and founders. She wasn't on stage. That honor belonged to Andre. He stood tall beneath the lights, dressed in a navy blue suit with his Tech Soil pin clipped to the lapel, as he spoke to a room that was finally listening. "Project Soil isn't just a funding initiative," Andre said, voice clear and measured. "It's a redirection. It's fuel for every visionary who was ever told their dreams needed a white voice to be real. It's our answer to being left out of boardrooms we helped build." The audience murmured with energy. Claps, nods, a few tears. Marilyn didn't move. She didn't need to. Behind her, a young black woman in a wheelchair whispered, "Is that her?" Her friend nodded, and they both stared in awe. Later, after the applause and the cameras and the business cards, Andre found her near the catering table, holding a glass of ginger ale and eyeing the tiny canopies with suspicion. "You didn't want to speak?" he asked. Marilyn shook her head, smiling just a little. "My words already built the stage. This part's yours." He nodded slowly. "You know, I don't think they saw you coming." She chuckled softly. "They never do. That's the beauty of being underestimated. It's the quiet before the bloom." Andre paused. "I want you to know I'm ready for whatever comes next." "You've been ready," she replied. "You just needed to see what happens when we stop waiting for permission." They clinked glasses. Just outside, a group of new founders, some as young as 20, some already graying, stood huddled under a tree, holding their newly signed term sheets like passports to a future they'd been locked out of. One of them, a trans Latinx coder named Jules, turned to the others and said, "I don't know what just happened, but I think this is what real equity feels like." Another nodded. "Feels like we're not guests anymore." Back at Whitman and Brooks, the board had convened in emergency session. The numbers were clear. In just 72 hours, their firm had lost more goodwill than they could manufacture in a year. Major partners were pulling out, clients were canceling meetings, and the SEC had opened a preliminary inquiry into Whitman's recent filings. They didn't blame the market. They blamed Co. "You told us she was past her prime," one board member said, her voice cold. "But you forgot that her prime built ours." Cole didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. His mouth, once his greatest weapon, now tasted like dust. Meanwhile, in Bronzeville, Chicago, a small community center had just received an unexpected email, a $2,500,000 0-cents grant from the newly launched Soil Legacy Fund, marked for building tech education labs for underrepresented teens. The director wept when he saw Marilyn's signature at the bottom. In a modest classroom across town, a high school student named Malik scrolled through the soil launch video on his cracked phone. He nudged his friend. "Yo, that's Andre, from South Shore." "No way. That guy used to tutor at the library, right?" "Yeah. Look at him now." A few seats over, a girl in a hoodie smiled quietly and opened a blank page in her notebook. At the top she wrote, "My startup." Back at the hotel where it had all started, the general manager stood stiffly in front of the receptionist, who had laughed at Marilyn. "I'm sorry," the receptionist mumbled. "I didn't know who she was." "You don't have to know who someone is to treat them like they matter," he said. "Clear out your things." She blinked. "Wait. What?" "You're done here." In the penthouse suite, untouched since Marilyn's departure, housekeeping found a single card resting on the writing desk. It wasn't the Centurion card. It was a business card. On one side, Marilyn Foxx, founder, M. Fox Holdings. On the back, "Legacy isn't what you keep, it's what you plant." Marilyn's car glided quietly down Lakeshore Drive. She watched the waves hit the shore, the wind pressing the past gently behind her. Andre sat beside her, staring at a list of startups they'd review next week. Founders from Detroit, Oakland, Tulsa, and Jackson. He looked over. "What now?" Marilyn leaned back. "Now, we do what we've always done." "Which is?" She turned, just enough to let a full smile reach her eyes. "We keep growing. And somewhere in every corner of the country where someone once doubted they'd be seen, a door opened just wide enough to step through. Because Marilyn Foxx didn't just cancel a deal. She planted a future. And this time, it was fertile ground.